Hey y'all, my name is Annie. Welcome to my channel, Eat, Drink, and Be Reading. And today I'm going to talk about all the books I read in March. Okay guys, March was a great reading month. I read like 9 or 10 books and it was a lot of fun. So many of them were just really fun, particularly because it was middle grade March, which I did participate in. I also read a couple other books that weren't middle grade that I really enjoyed. So let's get started with these books. And the first one I read was The Vandebeekers of 141st Street. This is a repeat of filming because I tried to say 141st Street like 4 times the first time and could not get it out. So I just started all over and we're doing okay. This book is by Karina Glaser. I adored this little book. It is about the Vandebeekers, which is a family with 5 kids that live in Harlem. And the kids range, I think, from 4 or 5 to like 12 or 13. And they are finding like their landlord's basically like he's not renewing their lease, and they love their home and this brownstone in Harlem. And so the kids are trying to convince their landlord, who lives a couple of floors up, to let them stay. I loved all the kids in this so much. They were so precious and sweet and fun and so real. Like as someone who has a 3, 5, and 6-year-olds, like it just felt so real. It made me want to like pack my family up and move to Harlem. Like I want to live there. And I'm like, I didn't know you could have 5 kids in Harlem and it not feel like a disaster. It doesn't. It's so much fun. It was just an utter joy, and I definitely recommend it. The next book that I read was The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. I do own this book, but I let a friend borrow it. This is a like World War II historical fiction about a little girl who has a clubbed foot, and her mom has abused her whole life and has kept her inside. She's like never really left their apartment in London because her mom is embarrassed by her and tells her that like nobody would want her to be out. But then when the bombings are going to start happening in London, like historically they sent most of the kids out of the city to the countryside to keep the kids safe from the bombs. And she sneaks out with her younger brother without her mom knowing and gets away from London, and they get put with this woman who did not want to take in any kids. It's a single woman. But of course there is found family and friendship. And I really liked it. I thought I was going to absolutely love it. It is right up my alley and I really enjoyed it. But I wouldn't say that I'm like, oh my gosh, loved it. I will say though that several of the middle grade books I read have sequels, and the only one I really want to read is the sequel to The War That Saved My Life. So it's definitely a story I'm very interested in, and I thought it was really well done. But for some reason, it wasn't amazing. It could have just been my headspace though. Okay, the next one is The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise by Gemeinhart. I was a little nervous about this one because it is a story of Coyote and her dad who live in a school bus that they just travel around in. Her mom and 2 sisters were killed in a car accident, I think 5 years before. And her dad is doing everything he can like to just try to pretend like they weren't ever a part of their lives, to not deal with the pain and to never go back to their hometown. But Coyote hears that there's a special park that is going to be destroyed, and it's really special to her for like reasons I don't want to give away anything. And so she like tries to trick her dad into driving from where they were in Florida back to Washington State. I was afraid to read it a little bit because I've recently lost my husband and my daughters have lost a parent. And so I relate a lot to Coyote and her dad. I loved it. This was my favorite book of the month, I think. At least my favorite middle grade. I understood the pain, and it might be because of, what I'm experiencing, but I understood the pain, and it was just beautiful. I loved the people that they come in contact with. I just thought it was really, really well done. A really beautiful story, deals with loss really well. Loss for the child, but also the loss that her father was experiencing, and what does it look like to create a new family after loss. So it was excellent. Highly, highly recommend Coyote Sunrise. The last book that I read, like on my own, intentionally for middle grade March, was Greenglass House by Kate Milford. I listened to this on audio. I didn't love the narrator. By the end, I was used to him, but definitely was not my favorite narrator. And I really enjoyed the story. It ended up being this mystery, which I knew it was, but it felt even like, I don't know that I recognized how much of a mystery it kind of was going into it. It is the story of, gosh, I wish I had written it down. Milo, there's his name. Milo, who is, he's adopted, which is an important part of the story. And his parents own an inn in this town that like is very friendly to smugglers, and a lot of smugglers stay at their inn. But over Christmas, all these really random, quirky people appear and start staying at the house, and Milo realizes there's probably something else going on as to why they are all there. And they all kind of have their own story, and they're each a mystery to him. I will say there is an aspect of this book that comes up at the end that I just did not like. Wasn't necessarily surprising. It's just not something I prefer in a story, and I don't want to say what it is without giving it away. I'm sure a lot of people loved it. I bet the middle schoolers really love it. I just think I would have preferred the story to go the way we were expecting, to not have that twist, and to see what Kate Milford would have done differently without the twist. But it was a lot of fun. It was, again, it's a middle grade mystery. What's not to love, what's not to enjoy. All right, the next two are books that I read with my kids, and they happen to be middle grade. And so the first is Roald Dahl's Matilda. We started this in February, but finished it in March. And then my kids got to watch the movie, which they loved. I read a lot of Roald Dahl as a kid, but I don't think I ever actually read Matilda, even though I saw the movie several times. And the illustrations are a lot of fun in this one. My kids need some illustration in their chapter books. If you don't know, Matilda is the story of this little girl who is like a genius. She teaches herself to read and is reading classics like Charles Dickens at age 5, and has just a calculator mind. Brilliant. But she's so sweet and kind. Her parents are horrible to her. They love the television and don't want her to read, don't want her in school. But eventually she does go to school, and there's a teacher there who she befriends and really helps Matilda. It's quirky enough and sweet enough, and you just kind of love Matilda. You feel for her, and you want to give her a hug, and you're also just I'm always really impressed by Matilda. And my kids loved it. Well, my 3-year-old was not interested, but my 5 and 6-year-olds loved it. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I finally read it. It was kind of an excuse for me to read this book. One of the reasons why they got it for Christmas. The other middle grade book that I read with my kids was The Magician's Nephew, which is the first chronologically in the Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis. I wasn't I've kind of been holding off because I couldn't decide what order I wanted to read these books in, because this is a prequel to the Chronicles of Narnia series. And so it takes place before The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but it wasn't written until book like 5 or 6. And there's a lot of debate on what order you should read these books in. I think if I was reading them myself, I would have, like for me, I would have read it in publication date. So I would have read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe first and waited till this one came out as book 5 or 6. Because I was reading it to my children, I didn't think they would fully understand the like prequelness of it. And so like the timeline would just be confusing for them to try and read it later. So we did choose to read it chronologically with them. It was so much fun. Yeah, I remember trying to read it as a kid and not getting that into it, but I loved it with my children. They loved it. I as a Christian, like reading the story of the creation of Narnia and picturing the creation of our earth and just the way it's described is beautiful. There's a moment in here where Diggory is talking to Aslan, and he is asking Aslan for help with his mother, who is very sick. And he talks about Aslan, like the tears in Aslan's eyes and how big they were, and the sadness he saw in Aslan, who represents Jesus, and that it almost seemed as if Aslan's sadness was bigger than Diggory's. And it was just a beautiful moment for me in the midst of my own sadness to remember that my God is sad along with me. But it's also just an adventure story. So even if you're just looking for that and don't care about the like religious aspects to it, it is a fun adventure story with good versus evil and brave children. And I recommend it. And I can't wait to read the rest. We've started Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe already, and we're loving it. Okay, non-middle grade books. I feel like this has taken forever. I gotta move on. The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Guys, I finally finished it. I started it at the beginning of February. It took me like 6 or 8 weeks to read this thing. I read it on audio. When I realized that the audio was 46 hours long, I knew it was going to take me like all year to try and finish it on audio. So I borrowed the book from my library as well and read it both ways. Not at the same time, like just whenever I could read with my ears, I did. Whenever I could read with my eyes, I did. This is the first in the Stormlight Archive series. It's a fantasy series by Brandon Sanderson. I've never read Brandon Sanderson. I've only read like one fantasy book, and that was N.K. Jemisin, her newest one that came out last year. I didn't like it. So I was a little nervous, but my neighbors bought me this audiobook back in the fall, and I wanted to try it because they love Brandon Sanderson, and I loved it. It was so much fun. I will say, though, I'm angry. I think I talked about this a little bit in my February wrap-up. I'm angry with how long this book is. It was unnecessary. Like, no book needs to be 1,000 pages long, especially if it's a series. Guys, there's thousands of pages left in this story, and it's just unnecessary. I don't care how good it is. You can make it shorter. You can. You just can. It doesn't need to be that long. But I will say this. Brandon Sanderson is a masterful storyteller, and he has to be, because I was never bored in those 1,000 pages. Like, I enjoyed the whole thing. It just meant that I wasn't reading something else too, for like much longer. And so if you're looking for something in fantasy, if you're looking for a really long book, I really did love The Way of Kings. It's so big that I don't even feel like I can give you a summary of it at all, because there's just so much happening and so many different characters and storylines that I know are like going to all intertwine and started to some at the end, but it just took it took 950 pages or something to connect any of the storylines, and that just feels unnecessary, as entertaining as it was. All right, the last fiction book that I read was Majesty by Katharine McGee. This is the sequel to American Royals, which was the story of if George Washington became a king instead of a president, and that America then had a royal family. So it is the story of this Washington family and some of their close friends. There's romance and heartache and confusion and sibling rivalry and just what does it mean to be a royal? What does it mean to be connected to the royals? And just what would America look like if we had a royal family? I really liked American Royals, probably because like the history lover in me actually loved thinking about what our country would look like. I also liked the different storylines. Sometimes I don't like that as much, but in something that can be a bit romance heavy, I get bored if it's just like one story, the whole book about romance. And so this was nice to have a few different stories wrapped in there. I really enjoyed Majesty. I think I would have liked, there's one of the stories I would have wanted, not even to change the ending, but to like an epilogue for the ending. Does that make sense? Like, I liked the way it went. I would have liked to know how it ended in the long run. But I actually really liked the endings for the other ones. And it really is just fun. I feel like I keep saying that. I had a really fun reading month. And I feel like April's making up for that. Not that it's bad, but my books aren't just like fun and joyful like these were. But I loved it. It was so much fun. I'm going to say fun like 17 times. Okay, the last book is Prayer in the Night by Tish Harrison Warren. I let my friend borrow this, so I'll put a picture up above. This is a Christian nonfiction. It deals with grief and like darkness and sadness, and it is talking about the prayer of Compline, which is a section of the like kind of the common prayers used in many liturgical churches. It might be my favorite Christian nonfiction I've ever read. I want to like put it in my veins and like osmosis all the information. I feel like I learned so much. I have so many thoughts about the church and what it looks like to grieve. I feel like I like thinking new things about prayer, and I just love Jesus even more because of it. So if you are a Christian, which I know a lot of you are not, and that's totally fine, but if you are, please pick up Prayer in the Night by Tish Harrison Warren. It is fantastic. Okay, this got way longer than I intended it to be. So sorry. So I'm gonna end it here. Thank you for listening. If you like bookish related things, would love to talk to you more. So please subscribe. Don't forget to like. What did you read in March? Did you participate in middle grade March? What did you read? What do you love? Let's talk in the comments. Let's build community. Bye, guys.